You imagine Al-Qaeda hiding in some caves in remote mountains? Not anymore. They want their own country. They found the land for that. It's Syria. The part of Syria which is under the rebels' control. We're talking about the northern part of the country that borders Turkey. According to an influential Arabic newspaper, Al-Sharq al-Awsat, which cites a source in the Free Syrian Army, Al-Qaeda-affiliated militants intend to actively assert their control over the territory immediately after Ramadan. Ramadan ends around the 9th of August. According to this source, Al-Qaeda is about to announce an Islamic state in Syria. They want full control over the weapons coming from Turkey and the money coming from oil smuggling. In Syria's eastern province of Deir al-Zor, for example, a network of tribes and smugglers has exploited the chaos of war to create an illicit oil trade. We saw reports that the Al-Qaeda-linked Al-Nusra has reached an understanding with the tribes over the division of spoils. The Al-Nusra Front has, of course, used this profits to buy more weapons and pay its fighters. Now, apparently, they want more. They feel powerful enough to want more. It makes some other rebels nervous. Of course, many rebels coordinate their efforts with the Al-Nusra, but those who refuse to do that risk their lives. Recently, the Al-Nusra have killed several members of the Free Syrian Army, including one member of the Western-backed Supreme Military Council. The territories controlled by the rebels now have all the signs of becoming the Al-Qaeda land. And in this new Al-Qaeda land, you have things like checkpoints where the militants check whether people are fasting or not. Locals from near Aleppo say they check their tongues to see if they're fasting, and if they're not, the militants beat them. Many Syrians are, of course, deeply saddened by what's becoming of their country.
Yeah, we'd like to welcome Johnny Achi from Arab Americans for Syria. Johnny, can you give us an update on what's going on in Syria, especially with this new revelation that, in fact, objective Al-Nusra, Al-Qaeda, both Iraq and Syria is to establish a state, a nation in northern Syria, and of course they're receiving covert background from Western NATO and so many Arab neocolonial states,
sure,
as well as Turkey. Go ahead.
Absolutely. It's an unchallenged figure that tens of thousands tons of arms have been shipped into Syria by way of Croatia with the assistance of the CIA, funded by, of course, Saudi Arabia and by Qataris, going almost exclusively to the more jihadist groups. Everybody knows this in Syria. We all know that.
Tell Ray this is going to last about 5 minutes, so he needs to make sure he's here.
I'm sorry, can you hear me, Didan?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So we know that tens of thousands of tons of weapons have been received by these jihadist groups in Syria. U.S. Obama's decision to support Syria's Al-Qaeda rebels is really not the first time. I mean, the U.S. has never ceased to support Al-Qaeda. These terrorist organizations were created by U.S. intelligence and supported by Washington. This is an undisputable fact. Hillary Clinton spoke of it in a congressional hearing. And the global war on terrorism that we are conducting, supposedly, with billions of dollars of U.S. tax dollars, that concept, waging a war on terrorism, at the same time you're going after the terrorists, but you're supporting the terrorists, is no longer a valid idea. It's heading like a dead end. With the American people, that's the question, will the American public support the government which funnels billions of tax dollars to a terrorist organization as a means to combating terrorism? And the bigger question, will the American servicewomen and servicemen that we send out there, will they accept this big lie? They continue to fight what visibly constitutes a fake war on terrorism, meaning we send our servicemen to go fight the Afghans in Afghanistan, bomb Afghanistan, yet we go send weapons to Afghanis entering Syria. We go bomb Mali because we want to combat terrorism, and then we go support Chechens and Saudis and Libyans who are entering Syria. That double standard is going to open up a can of worms. Syria is becoming absolutely what that report said, an Islamic state in northern Syria. And unfortunately, our border with Syria in the northern part is all with Turkey. So that Turkish 900-kilometer border is where the influx of mujahideen are coming in from different countries, are controlling the northern territories. I just spoke today, Bidan, with a Catholic patriarch from Hasaki. Hasaki is in the northern eastern part of the country of Syria. It's been quiet for the longest part, mostly Idlib and Aleppo, because they are much bigger condensed cities. But this Hasaki is historically a Christian town. I just spoke with him about an hour ago, and he was telling me how fearful the people in Hatake have become of kidnapping and killing people coming from, obviously people we don't know where they're from. They could be Libyans, Chechens, Afghans. This happens every day today. And the Christians are pressured to leave. They want to get out in whatever way they can. This is what the spirit chief was telling me is why the U.S. Obama historically Christians looked for the West for support, and Christians in the Middle East are minorities. But let's remember that the Christianity started there. Paul, he converted to Christianity on the road of Damascus, and he went and opened the biggest Christian town, which is Antioch in northern Syria. That was 2,000 years ago. Today, there's an exodus of Christians out of the Middle East. That is something that the United States agrees on. Why? Because they want to have a Jewish state, a Sunni state, a Shiite state. They want these areas to be divided. And the Christians have no place, unfortunately. There is not going to be a Christian state. We can't have a Christian state. So if the Western nations took a look what happens in Iraq, which still suffers today from fighting, killings, bombing, kidnapping, since the United States entered Iraq in 2003, at least 1 million Iraqi died. But also, over 80% of Christians, which were flourishing in Iraq, more than 3 million of them, have left. There's a civilization of the Kuldanis and the Ashuris. Those are civilizations that survived 10,000 years are no longer in existence. In Syria, we have Aramic, spoken language of Jesus, only spoken left in Syria. So trying to support terrorist groups, supporting extremists is not all this for the sake of what? Regime change? There are other ways to do regime change. So we need to, today Obama had frozen the decision to overtly support the rebels in Syria. And because he's under pressure. People like you and me are voicing our opinions, Iran, and some congressional members are also trying to push for that. You cannot support these terrorist groups. They're going to take this world backward, and they're coming back to haunt us, to haunt our way of life here in the United States.
Well, we thank you, Brother John. We have to move on to our next guest. We thank you very much. We'll have you on next week once again to give us an update on what's going on in Syria. We'll be speaking to Johnny Achi, Arab Americans for Syria. We thank you very much, my brother.
Thank you.